it's taking like 2 people, Osama bin Laden and like that, and they're just like, let's go to war for no fucking reason.
I know what I have to do, and I know what I signed up for, and I know that I'm here to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I feel that we started it.
You are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
It's this arrogance, it's this frat boy mentality that gets our country in trouble over and over again.
You are killing people and stuff. What the fuck is going on?
Thousands of people lie buried here. Americans won't easily forget September 11th. Not since the death of Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy has black and white America appeared so united in grief. As the war against terror continues, how long will this coalition last? The acrid smell still lingers in the air. A shrine to the missing and to patriotism has sprung up around the World Trade Center. New Yorkers of all colors and religions are still in mourning.
I don't really think that there's any real difference here, like between blacks and whites. Everybody is pretty much unified on the fact that this was, number one, horrible, and number two, there needs to be some sort of payback or retribution or some sort of action.
Please, any information. He has a pregnant wife who's doing 5 weeks and a 1.5-year-old daughter, and they're home waiting.
African Americans were tremendously affected by September 11th. One doesn't really know this from the coverage, but many of the workers in the Twin Towers were clerical staff, they were maintenance staff, they were the people that had to be there. The early shift, and the early shift, as we know, from most countries that are socially stratified tend to be more people of color. So yes, African Americans were dramatically affected, as were other people of color, and African Americans are going to be dramatically affected by any military action.
A naval task force with thousands of sailors, Marines and airmen on board left Norfolk, Virginia in September. The men and women on these ships are now at war with the Taliban.
Some of them may have just been freshly married, and it's going to be kind of an experience.
Now, this war will not be like the war against Iraq a decade ago, with a decisive liberation of territory and a swift conclusion.
Many black leaders enthusiastically backed the president's call for military action against terrorism.
It's a good thing that we crush the Taliban as quickly and as effectively as possible. I believe in the long run it will save the lives of more Afghanis. It will create, in the final analysis, a better quality of life for them. In fact, we will be liberating them from a tyranny, an unforgivable, unconscionable tyranny that now exists there.
African Americans make up only 12% of the population, yet are overrepresented in the armed services, making up over 20% of the US military. We went to meet 2 young black Marines who could end up fighting the Taliban.
I'll wait for you to
at first I thought, felt hesitant, but it's something I know that I'm going to have to do. I'll gladly go do that because, I have a family here and I want them to, know that I'd do anything to keep them safe, and whatever my part would be, I'd do it to help the cause.
You never wish anything like this ever comes up. However, this is what we trained for.
But not all politicians support the war.
Yeas are 420, the nays are 1. This joint resolution is passed. Motion to recommit is laid upon the table.
It one member of Congress that voted against the conflict was Californian Representative Barbara Lee. Hers was the only voice of dissent. Now others are asking questions. Lee's vote in Congress brought her death threats. On the West Coast, she has many supporters outside of her own constituency. In the Los Angeles district of Watts, well known for riots and drive-by shootings, Barbara Lee has surprising allies.
I feel that we started it. Somewhere in somebody's country or their country, we did something and started it, and bam, they retaliated.
Why they trying to kill us all?
It's not my problem. It's not my war yet. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got the money to start the war. You know what I'm saying? I ain't to go out like that. And if they try to come down here or anywhere, I won't be there. I'll tell you that.
No, this shit's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know. They killing people and stuff. What the fuck is going on?
I feel like we are big bullies. And it's more than way than just retaliation like that. It's more than other ways to solve this issue.
Experiences of racism past and present have given African Americans a feel for the underdog. The race riots of the 60s began an era of confrontation with the authorities.
In this country in particular, the peace process grew directly out of the civil rights movement. The most articulate and courageous spokesperson opposed to the Vietnam War was Martin Luther King. He recognized that one could not fight for justice and civil rights and civil liberties here at home while denying precisely those rights to individuals and groups around the world.
Anyone who feels, and there are still a lot of people who feel that way, that war can solve the social problems facing mankind, is sleeping through a revolution. President Kennedy said on one occasion, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind.
African Americans today look back to Vietnam, remembering that blacks at the bloodiest point of the war were more likely to serve and die on the front line. It took years for protests against that war to grow. Just weeks into this war, opposition has already started. Johnny Stevens, an anti-war activist and cameraman, fears that the black experience in this war will be the same as Vietnam.
Hi, Johnny.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. How you doing?
All right, very well.
Good.
I don't think war is the answer by killing other people. It never has been the answer. And most of the poor people has always been, and working people, been affected by wars. As we saw in Vietnam, where the bombardment didn't really win the war, didn't really penetrate at all. You had to put troops on the ground. And when these troops go on the ground, they will be the reservists. This is mostly African American again. So they will be frontline cannon fodder.
The legacy of bitterness lingers amongst African Americans about the numbers who died in Vietnam and how those who survived were treated on their return. Larry Holmes was drafted but refused to serve in Vietnam. After imprisonment, he was discharged as an undesirable. He is now a peace activist.
What is the International Day Against War and Racism? October 27th, so that gives you a full month to go back to your cities, your campuses, your churches, your unions, wherever you are, and begin organizing.
I know that a lot of young men, a lot of black men who join the Army or allow themselves to be drafted, thought that if they went over there like John Wayne and, you know, fought the good fight and came back and had their medals, that maybe they would be treated with respect. And maybe this is an experience that would counter the racial discrimination, which is part and parcel of this country. And they found out that it didn't change anything. I think that even more than during the Vietnam period, there is a very high percentage of black and Latino GIs in the military. There's no draft, but there's what we call the economic draft, because if you can't find a good job, you know, the Army is an economic opportunity. And you also, once you get out, you have the guarantee of paid college education and other benefits. So a lot of people in the community, in the ghettos across this country, going to the Army.
The South is where most African Americans still live. At its heart is Atlanta, a majority black city and birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King. Atlanta is home to some of the oldest and finest black colleges in the US. How many here are willing to fight for their country? A joint Army and Navy officer training course. The men and women here are on military scholarships. For some who graduate this year, the front line awaits them. Midshipman Candace Harris is one of them.
It's like a whole other aspect. My mom learned that I was going into the Navy. She was like, okay, well, you don't even like the water, so why are you going to the Navy to be stuck on a ship?
What are you hoping to achieve being in the services?
Well, of course, being a leader. I always look forward to like leading troops and like just being a leader in society. Okay. So I'm looking forward to that.
Would you still go in knowing what you know now if the decision was made today about joining the service?
Yes, I definitely think it's a good way to go. I wouldn't be here at Spelman if I didn't have the ROTC to pay for my tuition.
Now you're in the services, it means you've actually got to go to war. It's not just a case of getting some nice education.
Well, I try to put that worry back in the far back behind my mind, and I just hope that I can do a good job when I get out there.
The Marine Corps prides itself on its iron discipline. 2 days a week, midshipmen attend class in uniform. It's a matter of military discipline and self-pride that they are immaculately turned out.
I feel more patriotic, I feel proud to wear the uniform, I feel proud to be in the United States Marine Corps. And I think a lot of people around here are looking at my reaction because a lot of them come up to me and ask me questions. How do I feel about this? How I feel about that? And I feel like I'm setting the example. Well, I actually joined the service back in 1994. I was in the prior Navy, and my mom couldn't afford college, so Navy was a way for my education.
What's the difference between the cost of that and the cost of this? How much difference are we talking?
Between the Navy and Morehouse, we're talking about thousands of dollars.
What about your family? What are their reactions to you having to go to fight?
I get a phone call from my mom all the time, especially on September 11th. When she asks, are you going to have to go over to Afghanistan? And I tell her, hey, Mom, this is what I'm here for. You know, if I do have to go, I'll let you know. And I hope that the family is praying for me, and I hope that I come back safely. But if not, then you guys taken care of. So I just don't worry about it.
All right, again, we're just kind of continuing the analogy of...
Midshipman Erica Broadnax is a top student in the final year of her arts degree. She is also hard at work learning how to run a battleship.
I guess for 8 years of my life, I will be the property of Uncle Sam. It won't be a type of situation where I can just say, I want to quit, I want to leave, because I owe them time now. So I'm aware of the commitment. Since September 11th, now I realize how serious this really is. I'm being trained to be an officer to lead people to fight wars. Now it's becoming clear, and graduation is just around the corner. I'm scared because I don't know what's going to happen. I never thought I would be a part of a war that will go down in history. I never thought that we would go into war, but now that we are going into war, I'm forced to ask myself all these questions.
So if in a year's time, 9 months' time, you're sent to a fighting situation, how are you going to be able to carry out orders?
I just know that I have a job to do. I'm going to have to do it. I'm not going to really have a choice about it. And now I'm about to go out there. I'm not necessarily saying I regret it, but I guess I'm just in a state of shock.
For Atlanta colleges, this is the social event of the year. Stretch limos and off-the-shoulder dresses, not uniforms, are the style at the homecoming dance in a luxury hotel downtown.
Get on the floor! Move your feet. It ain't nothing that you can do with the man.
I find it kind of discouraging because the young people are getting involved in stuff that, where they should be here in college with us, they're over getting, involved in wars, and people are being taken over overseas to fight and stuff like that. I don't think it's right.
Where's the root? What is it that causes to have the conflict now, and that's what we should look to solve.
I probably wouldn't fight, but my dad's in the military, and I think, I don't know, I feel really patriotic towards America, and I love this country. However, I think our position in America is so that we're fighting for a country that doesn't love us as much. It seems as though our blood is not worth as much.
I only know one person who's really going into active duty right now, and I feel that she's serving her country. I mean, she's doing something that she wanted to do, even though it's hard to go into the military and we're about to go into war. That's something, I guess, when you make the decision to go into, you have to prepare yourself for it.
Defending your country, why won't you get involved in doing that?
I want to have babies.
A lot of people in the Army, a lot of people in the Navy, a lot of people in the Air Force. Send them first, and then come talk to me. But I mean, this is just the beginning right now. I don't think I'm going to be called. But if I am, then, hey, I got to do what I got to do, right? I want to make babies, too.
This is a war. That's the way they see it. You can't see it any other way, whether legally that is correct or not. It isn't going to be solved with a single counterattack against one individual. It's going to be a long-term conflict.
The next morning, Navy midshipmen led the homecoming parade and the party continued. Nobody here wanted anything to interrupt their game.
You gotta kill me before I go to war for America. Because what has America done for the black man? Nothing at all.
Why leave the country and go over there and help the Taliban? Why don't you all get the hell out the country and go help the Taliban?
Atlanta is a city divided. On the same day, just a few miles away, peace protesters marched to a different tune.
Peace protests have brought together several hundred people, mostly white, of all ages, but with a vocal black presence, uniting in opposition to war in Afghanistan.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
October 27th saw anti-war protests in 75 US cities.
The formal opinion polls that just came out a couple of days ago showed that there was a 90% support for military action among white Americans, and it was 70% among African Americans. I think a lot of people who support military action to surgically remove, as it were, Osama bin Laden, do not support the idea of a 3, 4, 5, 10-year war against unknown targets.
In a survey published in the Washington Post, more than half of all African Americans polled by the Pew Research Center believe that US actions abroad may have motivated the attacks, and twice as many black Americans compared to white Americans doubt whether the war will destroy terrorist networks.
3, 4. We don't want this racist war. I'm here because I'm for peace, and I realize there can be no peace without equal rights and justice. We're rallying here today because there's a need for this rally. There's a need for a voice, you know, and we're that voice.
If you ain't helping the cause, if you don't have a solution for the cause, keep it to yourself.
I hope that people understand that war is not the only alternative, that people are being killed, and when you go to that place of violence, you have to expect retaliation. So going into Afghanistan and killing innocent people is just going to spawn more terrorists, and it's going to create more conflict for America.
I can honestly say that if I wasn't a part of this organization, I would be a part of that. Because even though I'm going into the military, I didn't advocate the whole retaliation thing by the United States against Afghanistan.
The last person I would want to see before I left and kiss my wife goodbye was someone who was opposed to what I was doing.
I know what I have to do, and I know what I signed up for, and I know that I'm here to support, defend the Constitution of the United States. And anybody that goes against it, I just ignore them.
Freedom of religion, freedom of speech,
And there's also a fight to protect our rights here as Americans, because as you're already aware that they're trying to take many of our constitutional rights away because the anti-terrorist bill. So there is a connection, but the main thing is that we got to protect people's civil rights, and we have to allow people to be free in their own countries, and that should be something that we should all be for, period.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Congress recently passed an anti-terrorism bill increasing police powers of arrest and detention. It's seen as giving the green light to stopping and searching people on grounds of their race.
I have been stopped and searched at every single checkpoint. Every single one, including at the gangway, where it's not the gangway, but the jetway at the airport in Atlanta as I was getting on the plane. I think that these new security measures are going to heighten the problems that we have in the United States already with racial profiling, and they're going to intensify that racial profiling experience for African Americans. There are people in positions of authority who will use this opportunity to exercise their own biases, and they may well, for example, know that I'm an African American, but because they can, they will profile me.
First saved message at 9:55 p.m.
Yeah, tell Gatewood he's an asshole. Get back on the boat, go back to where he belongs, which is Africa. Don't belong in the U.S. He's a piece of shit.
End of message.
That message was left for the Reverend Curtis Gatewood, head of a civil rights organization in Durham, North Carolina, after he spoke out against the war. It's strange that in the land of the free, free speech is under attack. Some people don't want you to speak out if your views go against that of the majority.
We've had that I would consider to be someone who might represent white supremacist groups, and I would consider them very much terrorists who send messages such as these, which start by saying nigger coon Gatewood, and goes on to say that he wished I would take my 8 niggers colleagues or whatever and leave the country and get out of America. And of course, P.S., in the closing he says a good nigger is 6 feet under. Our African-American brothers and sisters should be willing to at least feel that they can stand and say what should be said or act to defend their own interests, even if it means death. Because it's certainly going to mean death if you're going to send young people on the front lines of a war for America, who, for the most part, when you're on that front line, chances are they have a body bag waiting on you.
It takes a lot of courage for a man to speak out and to stand up and to believe in something. I encourage him to continue to speak out.
End of message.
For the black press, African-American doubts about the war come as no surprise. Ben Jealous is Executive Director of the National Organization of Black Newspaper Publishers.
And a veggie sub. That really speaks to a role that African Americans play in this political system. As a moral vanguard, as a often a loyal opposition, or simply as people whose life experience isn't simply one of everything that the American government does for me is good. It's this arrogance, it's this frat boy mentality that gets our country in trouble over and over again, that makes life difficult for us here at home, and we suspect for others abroad.
We left survivor to die, waiting on you to get dressed out, get in the ocean.
Discipline, not questions, is the style at Naval Air Station, Pensacola. These men are training to be rescue swimmers. It's a dangerous and physically demanding job, even in peacetime. Up to 15,000 men and women, many of them Navy officers, are trained here each year. Jumping from a helicopter into the sea is the job of these elite sailors, being trained to save the lives of downed airmen. It's Jamar Hairston's dream to be part of this elite group.
I've always been proud of my country, but this is the proudest I've ever been because we've been able to, for lack of better words, been able to get back up from being knocked down and defend ourselves.
The military is proud of its equal opportunities record. Lieutenant Commander Claiborne joined as an enlisted man. His career illustrates the fact that the American military is one of the few employers in the country where race is no bar to promotion.
My sons are in the military. I think every individual needs to serve in the military just to get their bearings right, to get learn how to deal with responsibility. It's not gonna. It didn't hurt me. It hasn't hurt my sons any. They're growing up, making the right decisions and the right choices in life. So, and that's what the military did for me.
But as the wife of somebody in the military, what feelings do you have during a time like this?
I thought about my husband, if he was going to be, have to go away. And then I thought about my children. I remember, that some of them are away. And then I have that one, William, that's in the Air Force. I thought about him, what happened, and how would I feel if something should happen to my own. And I don't know. It makes me feel proud, as a parent and as a mom, I feel really proud that my sons want to do something for our country.
Tens of thousands of African Americans convert to Islam each year. Many convert in prison. There are now an estimated 3 million African American Muslims in the US. They have a different perspective on the war. Imam Plimon El Amin questions traditional ideas on patriotism.
I think the situation has made us to look at patriotism a little more deeply, and I'm praying that we can look at it even deeper to see a new world patriotism. I don't think it's enough to be just patriotic as Americans.
I feel there's a heightened alert about us as far as when we're in a community now. People are like, oh, those are Muslims over there, which is fine. And like I said, pretty much they just ask me now more questions and different things of that sort. I have had some things thrown at my door.
Practicing Muslims have Muslim names, and they tell of having flanks of detectives, 7 and 8, coming to their homes, and one of these I was talking to was a lawyer. These are not people who are suspicious in any way. They were born in this country. They're not aliens. They're not naturalized Americans. They're born Native Americans.
Islam is no barrier to patriotism, as an army reservist recently returned from active duty in Egypt explained.
When soldiers had learned that I am Muslim, their question is my loyalty. Their question was, why am I in the army? And do I plan to get out? I told them no. I made a commitment to stay in. I made a commitment to serve my country.
I mean, to be in a state of Islam is to be in a state of peace. So that just solidifies it and kind of puts the closure to my whole idea about war.
No, I do not exempt black American Muslim from not standing up and being counted in this war. I would want them to explain to me where were they when Muslims bombed the American embassy in Kenya and in Tanzania and killed hundreds of black people, black Africans. Where is their loyalty? How do they explain this? Hundreds of blacks were killed in 2 attacks on the World Trade Centers and 4 planes that crashed. 3 of them into buildings, 2 into the World Trade Center, 1 into the Pentagon, and 1 crashed into the ground in Pennsylvania. Where were they? And where do they stand? And those Muslims killing black people.
I'm not for, like, war. So nothing could justify it to me.
You are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
Too many of you crying.
This showbiz collaboration was first organised for AIDS victims in Africa. It quickly became a fundraiser for the victims of September 11. They've recorded a new version of a song by the black music legend Marvin Gaye. The money raised is to be split between AIDS victims and victims of the terrorist attacks. Marvin Gaye's What's Going On was written at the height of the Vietnam War. In 1971, it became the anthem which preached war is not the answer.
I think that song should be playing all the time, you know, because it just really strikes the chord, you know what I mean? It really hits home. You know, mother, mother, there's too many of you crying, brother, 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 far too many of you dying. We don't need to escalate. You know, it's just to bring some love in here today.
But even here, there is a contradiction not lost on African Americans.
Use of African American songs coming from the 60s that were anti-war songs like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On is ironic, right? There was a clear disjuncture between being sympathetic and being pro-war then, and there's also a disjuncture between being sympathetic to victims and being pro-war now.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
For Bush to say something like that, I don't really think it affects us too much because we're already getting screwed here anyway.
It's those kinds of absolutes that make it clear to me, and I think other resistors, that if you are a dissenter, if you want to raise issues of justice, if you don't follow the party line, that you are therefore un-American.
I don't really like Bush. And then I think about the fact that I have to take my orders from him. And I don't agree with a lot of the things that he does. So that's something else I have to deal with. Maybe if it was Clinton.
His popularity has jumped to over 70%, which is credited to the forceful way that he has dealt with this problem, the heinousness of the attack, and the basic patriotism of black Americans.
I guess if you're a true American, you will follow your leader. But I also think that if you're a true American, you would have a hand in who your leader is.
Well, President Bush was not elected. He was selected. And we were not assured that the candidate with the most votes won in this particular case.
The course of this conflict is not known, yet its outcome is certain.
Whilst Bush was not the president most African Americans wanted, many are now prepared to rally behind him in this time of crisis, but not without criticism.
What I think most African Americans were saying is, allow us to be who we are and allow us to be equal participants in the society based on who we are, which includes the ways that we are the same as well as the ways that we are different. One of the most important ways that African Americans are different is that we have a very specific history of being denied equal rights, of the government being used against us to suppress us. What we are talking about now is how to maintain a truth based on our own history that tells us in times of crises, the people most likely to be harmed are the least powerful. And it's our history that tells us that we need to support that and support those individuals. And doing so is not anti-patriotic. It's consistent with the deepest values that this country claims to be about.
That report by Devon.
A decade ago, with the decisive liberation of territory and a swift conclusion.
Many black leaders enthusiastically backed the president's call for military action against terrorism.
It's a good thing that we crush the Taliban as quickly and as effectively as possible. I believe in the long run, it will save the lives of more Afghanistanis. It will create, in the final analysis, a better quality of life for them. In fact, we will be liberating them from a tyranny, an unforgivable, unconscionable tyranny that now exists there.
African Americans make up only 12% of the population, yet are overrepresented in the armed services, making up over 20% of the US military. We went to meet two young black Marines who could end up fighting the Taliban.
America is taking like 2 people, Osama bin Laden and like that, and they're just like, let's go to war for no fucking reason.
I know what I have to do, and I know what I signed up for, and I know that I'm here to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I feel that we started it.
You are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
It's this arrogance, it's this frat boy mentality that gets our country in trouble over and over again.
You like killing people and stuff. What the fuck is going on?
Thousands of people lie buried here.
I'll wait for you.
At first, I thought, felt hesitant, but it's something I know that I'm going to have to do. I gladly go do that because, I have a family here, and I want them to, know that I do anything to keep them safe, and whatever my part would be, I do it to help the cause.
We never wish anything like this ever comes up. However, this is what we trained for.
But not all politicians support the war.
Yeas are 420, the nays are 1. This resolution, joint resolution, is passed. Motion to recommit is laid upon the table.
The one member of Congress that voted against the conflict was Californian Representative Barbara Lee. Hers was the only voice of dissent. Now others are asking questions. Lee's vote in Congress brought her death threats. On the West Coast, she has many supporters outside of her own constituency. Americans won't easily forget September 11th. Not since the death of Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy has black and white America appeared so united in grief. As the war against terror continues, how long will this coalition last? The acrid smell still lingers in the air. A shrine to the missing and to patriotism has sprung up around the World Trade Center. New Yorkers of all colors and religions are still in mourning.
I don't really think that there's any real difference here, like between blacks and whites. Everybody is pretty much unified on the fact that this was, number one, horrible,
And number two, there needs to be some sort of payback or retribution or some sort of action.
Please, any information. He has a pregnant wife who's doing 5 weeks and a 1.5-year-old daughter, and they're home waiting.
African Americans were tremendously affected by September 11th. One doesn't really know this from the coverage, but many of the workers in the Twin Towers were clerical staff, they were maintenance staff, they were the people that had to be there. The early shift, and the early shift, as we know, from most countries that are socially stratified tend to be more people of color. So yes, African Americans were dramatically affected, as were other people of color, and African Americans are going to be dramatically affected by any military action.
A naval task force with thousands of sailors, Marines and airmen on board left Norfolk, Virginia in September. The men and women on these ships are now at war with the Taliban.
Some of them may have just been freshly married, and you know, it's going to be kind of an experience.
Now, this war will not be like the war against Iraq.